Okay, so let's get started here and continue on. We left off with our last tutorial forming the mouth, and if I select my mesh, you can see I'm in my smooth mesh preview. I'm going to hit 1 to get back into my hard edge mesh preview. I know that's not the technical description, but it's how I like to call it. So let's look at this mouth here. You can see it's very square, and it's great if you're modeling a robot. But we need something that's a bit more organic, so I need to form this mouth a bit more, and to add the detail that we need, we're going to need more polygons, and needing more polygons means cutting polygons, so we'll get into our edge loop tool a bit more in this session. So I'm going to begin, just right click and go into vertex mode, and I'm going to select a vertex in the corner of that mouth, and you'll notice that as I highlight over it's blue, which means I'm in symmetrical mode, so that's great. Into my front view, W for my move tool, and I'm just going to move this down to kind of shape where my mouth is going to be. If I go into edge mode, if it'll allow me, double click to select the loop, you can see that what I want this kind of edge to be ultimately is kind of the ridge line of my lips. So what I'll eventually have to do is extrude some geometry back, or extrude these edges back, to create more lip detail and a little bit of kind of a mouth cavity as well. So back to vertex mode, I'm just going to select that vertex and move it down about there. And that looks pretty good. You'll notice that I know my face is not symmetrical, but if I select, if it'll let me select this vertex here, and I come back to be more in the corner of my mouth, the distance between that vertex down on by both sides is a bit off, and I need, for the moment, I want that to be symmetrical. So I'm going to go into my side orthographic side view, and you see that there's this little trick I like to use where with these vertices selected, I'm going to hit R for scale, and I'm just going to scale these vertices together in Z and Y, and that will put them perfectly symmetrical on the front of my face now. So what happens is these are symmetrical, but then now these are knocked off, and we can see the difference. So let's go back to our side view, and let's make these symmetrical. So I've got a decent mouth shape, and at this point I can start adding detail, and I'm going to do that with my edge loop tool. So mesh tools, insert edge loop. Remember, I need to create a loop around this mouth, so if I just hold my shift key down, you think it would create, it would snap to like our multi-cut tool to the center, or divide these faces in half. It does not. It's still an interactive cut, which is okay, but if you really wanted to kind of divide this up, which really isn't that necessary, but if you won't, because we're doing organic modeling, if you wanted this to be precise, you could just double click to get into our tool setting, and if we clicked on our, what we want is this multiple edge loops, and use equal multiplier. If that's turned on, that's great. So when I click, I can't move this anywhere. I'm trying to move it. It just puts it for me. And what it does, it gives me an equal distance division on my faces, which is great. I don't want 2s though. I just want 1. And this is a little trick to divide those faces up, but like I said, it's not necessary, so I'm just going to go back and say reset the tool and just close it for now. Still in my tool, And I'm just going to add a couple of loops to give me detail. And I'm going to go into my edge mode, double click that edge loop, which will be kind of the ridge of my lips. Click once on my extrude tool, and I don't want to do a thickness out or back because it's going to create all sorts of wonkiness, as we'll see here in our side view. Instead, just Control Z to undo that, and I'm just going to select my move tool and just move this straight back. If I use my scale tool now, I can scale that back edge completely flat in Z and just scale that up in Y to give me the beginning of a good mouth cavity. And later on I would add loops inside of that to create more detail for my lips. But right now let's just deal with the detail we have now into vertex mode, orthographic front view X-ray. I'm just going to start dealing with some of my vertices. And you can see that really this X-ray mode might be too transparent for us right now. And so we may want to just kind of deal with some other things first. This is still on the outside of my mouth here, is still square, and this comes back to maybe a good point. I should have mentioned that when we're adding loops, you got to be careful that you're not adding too much detail too soon. Here I could maybe delete one edge here, because what I want to do is move the entire mouth into more of a curved, natural mouth muscular edge flow. And to do that, I'm going to turn on my soft select mode, and that's done by hitting B. And holding my B key down, I can just left mouse and drag to turn the radius of that down a bit. And now I can just move that in. So that's just a quick way to get, and B to get out of that soft select mode, but that's a quick way, an easy way to move a bunch of vertices at once. So you can see I'm getting a little bit of a fish face here, and that just means that perhaps we're not getting the edge flow we need for a human. So I'm going to go into my side view, and now I'm just going to select some of these vertices and just move them back so that they're better spaced, or that there's better topology. Because the corner of a mouth can get a little tricky. Now if I hit 3 to go into my soft mesh preview, you can see that now we're getting something that looks a bit better. I just need some detail inside of those lips, so I'm just going to go back to my edge loop tool, and I'm going to add one loop at a time because I don't want to get too carried away. And in this case, I'm just going to still stay in edge loop, and I'm just going to select just those two edges. I'm going to lift them up. So when I can select this vertex, it's going to be kind of that interior edge. I don't like how lifting the edges lifted that, so I'm just going to undo that and instead just lift that vertex up. I think that'll work a lot better. Now I can bring that up. can start forming my lips a bit better. Better adhere to what our face is doing. And you can see how the topology really starts to follow the shape of our face here. Now it's not perfect, but I will be shaping that out a bit better as we go on. If I hit 3. So still a fish face because we haven't defined our lips, and we will, but right now there's enough geometry to take and sculpt this better and faster in Mudbox. So for now I'm going to leave this. This is 80% of what we need to do to model our mouth, and next we'll work on modeling the nose, because you recall I talked about modeling this head is exactly like sculpting bust in clay. You start with a big lump, pound it into a sphere. It has a kind of a neck shape, and then we start modeling major features first, like nose and mouth, and then we move on to the eyes and brow, and it's exactly the same kind of method and process here. So we want to do kind of overall modeling first. We don't need to kind of get into the detail of shaping lips perfectly and then coming back and seeing that our nose is too big as we model the nose, or we've made a mistake back in the mouth. We'll leave this for now, and then our next section we will continue with the nose.